Now, a common question I get is, what do I do with my acrylic paintings once they are dry? Number one, acrylics tend to dry a little duller compared to when you actually paint it on, which is understandable. And then, do you varnish them? How do you get that color back, that intensity, especially in the darks? The short answer is yes, I do varnish my acrylic paintings. But with what? We're going to have a look at that in this video. Now, I'll probably do this in an unorthodox way, so take whatever I say with a pinch of salt and try it out for yourself on something that is not precious to you, all right? Always test out your varnishing methods. But I use three types of varnish, and it all depends on the circumstances. Firstly, I have retouch varnish for oil paints, I have a water-based varnish, and I also have spray varnish. All three of these work with acrylic paintings. But hold on, how can I use retouch varnish meant for oil paintings on acrylics? Now, as a guy who has painted many skirting boards in his lifetime, I can assure you that oil-based enamel paint's the only way to do a skirting board, and you can forget about that water-based enamel paint. I don't care what they say at the hardware store, I have found the oil-based one works. And something similar with varnishes as well. The ones for oils, they'll work on anything. Which is best? Well, each one for their own circumstances. I'm going to show you three paintings and I'm going to use the different methods on them, and then you can judge which is going to work for you. I've got the three varnishes here, the retouch, the water-based, and the spray retouch varnish. I'm going to start off with the spray varnish. Krylon Conservation Retouch Varnish. Gives a nice coverage, and you can see those darks really come out. It makes a beautiful difference to the painting already. And it dries nice and quick. Now the next one, I'm going to use the retouch varnish, which I brush on. This is for oils, but I'm using it on my acrylic painting. And you can see it goes on just fine. It doesn't react to the acrylic at all. A nice coverage and quite thin and easy to apply. Now this dark's looking much better. And finally, I'm going to use the water-based varnish with the characteristic cloudy color to it. It's much thicker, as you can see, going on fairly thick, but a nice gloss to it. It's brought out those darks straight away. So we'll leave that to dry, and after a few hours. Okay, let's look at the varnished paintings now that they're dry. Starting off with this one. This was varnished with the spray retouch varnish, and you can see there's quite a strong sense of the varnish. You can see the reflection, the darks looking really good, and of course it dried very quickly and very quick to do, but of course you must do this preferably outdoors. It is of course a toxic spray, but there you go, retouch varnish spray, nicely done. The next one, this was the brush on retouch varnish, and that was also dried very nicely. Not as intense in strength as the spray retouch varnish, but you can see it's got a sheen to it and it's brought out the darks nicely, and that's good. I actually feel I could give it another coat. So quite a gentle treatment. And then finally the water-based brush on varnish. Now this is a gloss varnish, and you can see certainly gives a bright look to it, and it certainly does bring out the darks very nicely. But a thicker varnish, you can definitely tell that there's a good layer of varnish on this painting, but that's not a bad thing. It's just as a more presence as a varnish than the other two, which because they're retouch varnishes give a very gentle coating. So you decide, but the point is all of these ways do work with an acrylic painting, and it's up to you. The advantage with the water-based, of course, is you can wash your brush in water. Although there is some smell to it, it's not that bad. The spray varnish, quite strong and should be done outside. And also the brush-on retouch varnish, also not a particularly pleasant smell, and I would also want to do that in a well-ventilated space and have it dry somewhere else outside my studio. So there you go. You decide which is best for you. Now, which do I use? I use the brush-on retouch varnish and sometimes the spray varnish because they cover all bases, acrylic and oil paint. I will not use a water-based varnish on an oil painting. There is that aspect to it. Well, there you have it. It was a bit of a surprise to me the first time I used retouch varnish on my acrylic paintings. I didn't have any other varnish on hand, and I tried it out and it worked great. And over many years, those paintings still look amazing. There's no problem with the retouch varnish on acrylics. The water-based varnish, I just don't really like them. There's something about putting on that cloudy varnish and then waiting for it to dry so it looks clear that kind of is disconcerting for me. I also find the varnish to be a little thick, whereas I like the thin varnish made for oil paints, and it works perfectly on the acrylics. Am I worried that it's going to damage the acrylic paint? No, not at all, because dried acrylic paint is probably the most secure surface there is, so there's been no problem there. But as I said, test these methods out for yourself. Don't count on my word on this. The spray varnish, it's always handy to have a can of that available. Retouch varnish made by Krillon. There are different types with Krillon, but they all do one important thing. They give you a quick drying coat of varnish. You can paint over that, or you can leave it as it is, and it makes the painting quite secure in its frame. You can clean marks off with no problem, and it just gives a very light protection to an oil painting and an acrylic painting. And another important factor, talking about oils now, is the thin retouch varnish lets the oils still dry and breathe if they are not completely dry right to the bottom of the layer. So there it is. Keep a couple on hand. For my part, the spray varnish and the brush-on retouch varnish is all I seem to use for the most part. Okay, well, if that has helped you make a decision, then that's great. I hope I haven't confused the matter even further. But remember, acrylics should be varnished, and it does make the colors stand out a lot better. All right, with that, I just want to remind you that I have a free course for you up here. I also have it in the description to this video. And if you could like and subscribe this video, that would be great as well. Right, until next time, happy painting and cheers for now.